Welcome to Breaking Free from Anxiety. This is a course to help you overcome anxiety and start living your life to the full. It's brought to you by Riverside and Cronton College. Anxiety. So what is it? It's a feeling of worry, nervousness or unease about something. It is our way of perceiving a threat and doubt in our ability to cope with it. The key word is perceiving. We will talk more about that later. So how common is anxiety? More than 1 in 6 people in the UK are likely to have a disabling anxiety disorder at some stage in their life. This means that anxiety prevents them from doing certain things. The symptoms of anxiety include chest pain, sweating, rapid breathing, nausea or diarrhea. It tends to be a fight, flight or freeze prior to a situation we normally find uncomfortable. Do we tackle the threat? Do we run away from the threat? Or do we freeze? The psychological symptoms of anxiety are inattention, agitation, fear of losing control, dread that something catastrophic is going to happen, such as blackout, seizure, heart attack or death, and irritability. So just have a think, which of the symptoms mentioned do you experience the most when you become anxious? What is the difference between panic and anxiety? Panic is a sudden, intense response to normal thoughts or sensations. This is often accompanied with a feeling of impending doom and physical symptoms, such as increased heart rate, palpitations, and pins and needles. For example, in a real life or death situation, people tend to panic as there is a real threat perceived by everybody, say trapped in a burning house, for example. However, anxiety is more of a psychological condition, prolonged by thought processes and rituals which cause the person affected to avoid certain situations which they believe will exacerbate their anxiety. And it's this avoidance behaviour that affects their quality of life. Anxiety is more to do with a person's perception of a situation. For instance, getting on a bus isn't a life or death situation, and 2 people will see the same situation as different. However, the person experiencing anxiety will perceive getting onto a bus as dangerous, but somebody else will not. Checkpoint. How anxious are you on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the most anxious? A good tip is each morning, give yourself a score out of 10 of how anxious you're feeling for that day. Start to think of what you're doing that day. Is there a pattern forming? Do you start to feel more anxious when you know that you're going to meet people or that you're going to be on your own? Does it tend to be when you're getting on public transport? Once you start to see a pattern forming, it's a lot easier to break the cycle. Common triggers of anxiety, new situations. One common cause of anxiety is the introduction of new situations. We doubt our ability to cope with a new situation and we feel threatened. We tell our bodies we are facing danger. This then makes our heart beat faster, ready for battle, and produces adrenaline. Anxiety not only occurs during the new situation, but can also occur leading up to the event, slowly building as the prospect of the new experience grows closer. For example, the journey to college, if the anxiety is towards speaking out loud in class at college. The person may dread getting on the bus and believing their anxiety is public transport, as this essentially leads them to the place where they feel uncomfortable. Their anxiety of speaking out loud in class, or being in a group of friends. Other situations that can cause anxiety are giving a performance, parties, meeting new people, making small talk, writing in front of others, stating your opinion, reading out loud, eating in front of others, or using public toilets. Unhelpful thinking. So what is unhelpful thinking? When a person experiences an unhelpful thought or emotion, usually depression or anxiety, it can be a way of protecting ourselves by constantly thinking the worst and preparing ourselves. This can lead our body to perceive danger, therefore producing adrenaline or anxiety. Examples of unhelpful thinking. Demand statements. I should be able to deal with this. I have to pass this exam. These statements put us under enormous pressure. If instead we say, I could deal with this, but I may need some support with some of it. All or nothing thinking. Looking at things in black or white. Good or bad. Success or failure. I failed my exam. Instead say, I now know where I need to work on to improve my score. Jump into conclusions, where you believe you know the outcome before it has happened. I'm going to fail this exam. I'm not going to get this job. Instead, try saying, I can only control what is in front of me, and I will do my best and learn from the experience. Catastrophizing. I'm going to get 0 out of 100 on the test. I'm going to fall flat on my face on the way to the job interview. I'm going to have a panic attack. Instead, ask yourself, when was the last time you got 0 in a test? Or when you tripped up in an interview? Therefore, what are the odds of it actually happening? Mind reading. Assuming you know what others are thinking about you. I bet they think I'm weird. They probably think I'm an idiot. Instead, try saying, I have a lot of great qualities that I can offer. Asking what if, and only asking yourself the negative questions. What if I fail? What if they laugh at me? What if they are disappointed? Instead, try asking, what if they like my sense of humour? Or the fact that I'm interested in them? Checkpoint. Which situations make you anxious? What number out of 10 did you feel before the situation and why? What number did you feel after the situation and why? Can you see the difference? In almost all cases, when we reflect on a situation that we were feeling anxious about, the outcome wasn't anywhere near as bad as we had played out in our head. Emotional reasoning. This distortion involves thinking that if we feel a certain way, it must be true. For example, if we feel unattractive or uninteresting, we think we are unattractive or uninteresting. I feel it, therefore it must be true. The facts are often very different to what we tell ourselves. Another way of looking at it, I always screw things up. I'm such a loser. What's wrong with me? A more realistic and balanced thought could be, everyone makes mistakes, including me. I'm only human. All I can do now is try my best to fix the situation and learn from this experience. A more realistic and balanced thought could be, it's okay and normal to feel anxious. It's not dangerous, and it doesn't have to stop me. I can feel anxious and still go to the party. Checkpoint. What is the evidence for something going wrong that you are worried about right now? For example, I'm worried about falling over when I arrive to the lesson. When was the last time you fell over? If the answer was never, remember this and say this to counteract your unhelpful thinking. There is no evidence. So, what is the likelihood of it happening? Is it realistically going to happen? The odds will be extremely low, and yet we spend a lot of our time telling ourselves falling over is the only option. 3 things. If you have something that is troubling you, come up with 3 things that you are in control of to help yourself. For example, I'm really anxious about getting to the dentist. 1. Go with a dentist who is sympathetic for nervous patients. 2. Call the dentist before your appointment to state that you are feeling really nervous. 3. Ask your dentist that if any time you raise your hand, they will stop the treatment. Doing this will put you back in control and you are more likely to attend and feel slightly less anxious. Social anxiety. Social anxiety is a very common anxiety. The behavioural explanation is that one theory suggests that we develop social anxiety because of our past experiences. For example, if an infant touched a hot oven door, the pain from this experience would quickly teach them that oven doors are dangerous and should be avoided in the future. Similarly, it may be that social situations which once posed us no fear were influenced in a similar way. For example, if someone felt embarrassed or humiliated in a previous social situation, for example when talking to a small group of people, they may worry that similar situations will go exactly the same way in the future. As a result, they begin to fear and avoid them and any lead up to them. Thinking styles. Another theory suggests that some people have a thinking style that lends itself to developing social anxiety. For example, socially anxious people are more likely to predict that they will perform poorly in social situations. They also tend to think that everyone is paying close attention to them and scrutinising what they are doing or saying. Socially anxious people tend to hold negative beliefs about their ability in social situations. For example, they may believe they are boring or have nothing interesting to contribute. Of course, thinking in these ways can lead to high levels of social anxiety. Checkpoint. How are you feeling right now? Try this. Instead of perceiving crowds or people as danger, try telling yourselves crowds can be opportunity, i.e. you never know who you're going to meet. Your body will respond to what your mind tells it. If you tell your body the situation is threatening, you will produce adrenaline, ready for danger or battle, and this can affect your sleep and concentration. You will either be exhausted or constantly on high alert. However, if you tell your body that something is an opportunity, it's more likely to produce feel-good hormones. The washing machine. Think of the washing machine as our brain, and the items of washing are our thoughts. To have a more peaceful mind, our thoughts should just fly out, instead of lingering above our heads, like on a washing line, where we constantly stare at them and then proceed to overthink different scenarios with unhelpful thinking. At times, we pay too much attention to thoughts. We peg them up on a washing line and give them importance. We trust that all of our thoughts are true because they have come from inside our own heads, but this isn't the case. Checkpoint. So which thoughts do you peg up? Which thoughts do you give more importance to? When we peg our thoughts on the line, we are saying to ourselves that these thoughts are important, true, and meaningful. For instance, think of your morning routine. If you are anxious about a presentation later, most of your thoughts will just fly away, such as shower, breakfast, make lunch, etc. But when it comes to walking to the bus stop, then setting up the presentation, these are thoughts we may peg on our line as we are lingering over them and adding emotions to them. The washing line is our day. The more washing we have pegged up with negative thoughts, the more anxious we become. This can in turn have a massive impact on our sleep. Example, I have an exam today that I will fail. So fear, worry and dread is the unhelpful thinking. I'm in a new classroom today. I will get lost. I'll be last in the lesson and everybody will look at me. So you'll be feeling fear and embarrassment, which is unhelpful thinking. What happens to the thoughts that we don't peg? We don't attach emotions to them. They just stay as thoughts. We have millions of thoughts in which we don't attach emotions to. Try this instead to help. I've got an exam today, but I've revised. So anyway, let's see what happens. I've got the dentist today, but I've been before and it was okay. And they know I'm a nervous patient, so anyway, let's see what happens. If we don't attach our thoughts or washing to the line, we don't give as much importance to it. Less washing on the line, less to focus on, equals less anxiety. Checkpoint. Think of your daily routine today. Tell me the thoughts that you let fly away and pay no attention to, such as switched off the alarm, had a shower, had breakfast. The shrink. What is the shrink? Think of when you're using your phone. To make a picture smaller, you shrink it so that it vanishes. You have control of doing this. Now think of doing the same thing to your thoughts. The thought that keeps cropping up that you have anxiety about, quickly shrink it. Imagine yourself shrinking it on your phone to where it is insignificant. Try this. Thought pops into your head, count down from 5, shrink it and move on. Purposely bring yourself back into the present, in which you can control. You may have to do this dozens of times, but you are now in control of your thoughts. The flinch. The flinch is the moment before you do the activity that causes you anxiety. It's the shall I or shall I not moment. The more that you go through the flinch, the more you will get used to feeling uncomfortable. The more you get used to feeling uncomfortable, the more confident you will become and less anxious. So try this. I never normally give suggestions to my tutor, so I will start. Even if at first it's just after the lesson, then I will build up from there. In his best-selling book, First Man In, Ant Middleton, who was a member of the SBS, or Special Boat Service, Special Forces, explains that he was once with his young son at a martial arts competition. His son was worried when he saw that some people got hurt in their bouts, broken noses, etc., and was thinking of quitting there and then due to his anxiety. Ant explained to his son, and it's something that we can all learn from, that in fact, when our heart is racing and our adrenaline is pumping, when we are feeling anxious, we are in fact getting ready to go into battle. Instead of our bodies wanting us to retreat, our bodies are making us stronger and faster and able to cope with whatever is ahead of us. Ant told his son that just before his bout started, in his head to say, "Get ready, go." And this changed his son's mindset to be more confident doing the thing he was most anxious about. His body was complementing his mind, getting it ready, not going against it. Try this. When you are at the flinch stage, say in your head, get ready, go. Your body will follow what your mind is telling it. All that adrenaline will help you, not hinder you. You just need to know what command to give it. Next, we enter the fear bubble. What is the fear bubble? The idea of the fear bubble also came from Ant Middleton. He said he was constantly exhausted from anxiety of worrying about being in the red zone, the life or death part, in a war-torn country, even when he was safe at home. He figured he needed to reorganise his thoughts to only be alert when he was physically in or near the red zone, and not when he was nowhere near the danger, therefore giving him more energy and strength for when he actually needed it. Makes sense, right? The fear bubble is the actual place that we tell ourselves we are in danger and where our anxiety is at its highest. Some examples may be being on stage talking in front of many people, being in the dentist chair, getting on that packed bus. The fear bubble is not in the dressing room before going on stage, because you are still safe. It is not in the dentist's waiting room, as you are still safe. It is not walking to the bus stop, as you are still safe. So if you are not in the fear bubble, tell yourself, I don't need to be alert yet, as I'm not in the fear bubble. I can relax and save my energy until then. If we can master the fear bubble, and you will, our anxiety will lessen. How do we master the fear bubble? We look at our day and understand exactly where the fear bubble is, which is where our anxiety is at its highest. Example, I'm dreading tomorrow as I have the dentist at 4 p.m. So, the fear bubble is when you are actually in the dentist chair at 4 p.m. And if your dentist appointment is 5 to 10 minutes, then out of 24 hours in a day, you will only be in the fear bubble for about 5 minutes. Seeing your fear like this will help you reduce your anxiety as it makes it easier to tackle. Checkpoint. When you're in the fear bubble, acknowledge it. Breathe deeply, look around it, explore it, and praise yourself. When you're sitting in that dentist chair, or you're on stage speaking to people, say to yourself, I'm in the fear bubble right now. I'm experiencing it. I'm in that place I thought I would dread, but am I actually in any danger? When you ask these questions, you are challenging your unhelpful thoughts and reducing your anxiety, because you've already started to master and control your anxiety by turning and facing it. When you're in the fear bubble, embrace it if you can, and people do. It may sound crazy, but look around your surroundings and take it in. Some people who may come across as just adrenaline junkies are actually mastering their fear bubbles and enjoying the chemicals produced from embracing their fear bubbles, the endorphins released. Some people, and yes, we mean you, may even start to seek out fear bubbles so you can enjoy the feeling after. So where is your first fear bubble? Let's break it down. What's your anxiety? What are your immediate thoughts? Are any of these thoughts unhelpful thinking? If so, which one? Let's challenge the unhelpful thinking. Is it a fact or just a thought? Is there another way of looking at it? What would you advise somebody else in this situation? What do you think the number of anxiety would be after the event out of 10? What evidence is there to suggest the worst case scenario may happen and is the only option? Where is thinking like this going to get me? Is it going to make me feel unwell? Is it going to make me feel worse? Checkpoint. Find 3 ways to solve the anxiety. Example, I'm worried about getting to this place on the bus next week. So, what do I feel about it out of 10 and why? 10 being the most anxious. What am I likely to feel about it after the event when I've achieved it and why? Go through the unhelpful thinking. Then come up with 3 ideas to solve it. Example, look up the bus timetable and get an early bus to ensure you have enough time. Do a run through a couple of days before so you're confident on the day. Look up on a map of how to get to the place from the bus stop. Have enough money for a taxi in case of a backup and have 2 taxi numbers written down. Out of 24 hours in a day, how long will you actually be in the fear bubble? 1 minute, 15 seconds. Shrink the thoughts of the anxiety. When you're in the flinch, it won't be as big a deal because you will have prepped. When you are in the fear bubble, praise yourself and ask yourself exactly what is it like? And ask, is it like how you thought it would be? Or better? Ways to help. Lots of factors can help you control your feelings of anxiety. A combination of therapy, medication, and self-help strategies can help anybody affected by anxiety overcome the disorder and reach a point where they control their anxiety rather than the anxiety controlling them and affecting their quality of life. Talk it through with somebody beforehand. Go and speak to your GP. Try to pinpoint each hour of the day or the next day and notice which events of the day cause your heart to race. It is often not the whole day, but a small section, i.e. a job interview lasts an hour, but we may worry about the whole of the next day. But the evidence is that it's only 1 hour of that day. Pinpoint each minute of those events and try to challenge your thoughts from the unhelpful thinking. What is the actual evidence? Come up with strategies to counteract your thoughts. What is the actual likelihood of your worst case scenario coming true? And if it should do, what are my strategies? Picture yourself walking through the event you were worried about and visualize 5 minutes after it has happened and picture how you would feel. Graded exposure. Say if you worry about getting on a train at rush hour, try going to the train station at the quietest time and just stand at the station on the first attempt. Then get a train at the quietest time and then build up to rush hour. Don't attempt to tackle the event all at once. Break it into achievable stages and eventually you will get comfortable with feeling uncomfortable. Anxiety doesn't last forever. If you stay in the situation, the anxiety will very slowly diminish. Your body will adapt. Let's go through it together. What is the situation that you are feeling anxious about in the future? What are you feeling about this and why? Do you think there is any unhelpful thinking going on? And if so, which one? What would be the worst case scenario of that incident? Do you have any evidence of the worst case scenario ever actually happening? Name 3 ways that you could deal with the worst case scenario. Suggest 3 ways of how you will problem solve so as to reduce the anxiety before the event. How do you feel now about the event, now that you've come up with 3 ways to reduce the anxiety? As you become more confident, you will start to automatically problem solve and challenge your unhelpful thinking. So, in summary, what's the anxiety? Out of 10, how do you feel about it and why? Is there any unhelpful thinking going on? What's the worst case scenario? How would I deal with the worst case scenario? How likely is the worst case scenario to happen? Name 3 ways to problem solve prior to the event. How do I feel about the anxiety now that I have problem solved? Out of 10, how anxious do I feel now? And repeat. Trigger points in the week. Think of your week and put an X in the hours that you feel you're most worried about. So say if on a Monday at 9 o'clock you're worried about walking into your classroom. When you see it as 24 hours, that 1X at 9 a.m. doesn't quite feel as bad. It doesn't feel as overwhelming. You're going to come up with 3 strategies to ensure that you feel less anxious. Do this for your whole week. Anxiety diary. What I want you to do is to print this out or to ask yourself, how do I feel out of 10? Why have I put this number out of 10? The more that you do this, the more that you'll understand your own mind, the more that you'll come up with strategies. And once you rinse and repeat, you will see that your anxiety will lessen over time. It is like a muscle, so you have to keep doing it, but once you do, you will start to live a more fuller life. If you feel that you need any extra support, please go and see your GP or look on the Solar page. There are many agencies that can help you. Speak to your tutor or come down to Programme Management and speak to any member of staff in there or ask to speak to the Wellbeing team. Thank you.